Hi there, welcome to my channel. And today we will discuss about behavioral observation, how to do it. Okay, so with me, Dekonia Swasti, I will briefly explain this topic to you. After reviewing the referral questions and selecting a well-balanced and planned battery of tests, examiners turn their attention to the examinee's behavior during the course of the evaluation. They augment the information gleaned from test findings and to improve their clinical inferences. Examiners are encouraged to keep a verbatim record of the examinee's verbal asides and behaviors during the course of the evaluations. Detailed descriptions should be made of any unusual behaviors or statements. Observations gathered during the course of testing, verbal asides and responses to test stimuli offer a rich pool of behaviors from which examiners draw inferences. Well, these descriptions of the client's behaviors will be integrated with the clinical inferences made from test results. Their value lies in their objectivity. States of mind inferred from test data are less objective than behavioral observations and will, therefore, need to be verified through integration with the behavioral observation. Okay, this is the first section of the behavioral observation. Is the observation during the assessment. The testing environment differs from most other environments in part because the interaction is most often one-to-one and thus more personal and focused than group interactions. In addition, the environment is carefully controlled to maximize the examinee's attention and performance. In other words, the testing is designed to elicit the person's optimal performance. Therefore, the observed behaviors may not be representative of a person's typical behaviors in another setting, such as a noisy classroom. You may suspect that the observed test behaviors are representative of typical behaviors observed in the home, school, or workplace, but you would want confirmation from others. The behaviors observed during an assessment are, however, critical to understanding a person's test performance. For example, observing a student's behavior during the WISC-4 arithmetic subtest will help you to determine whether the difficulties on this supplemental task were due to anxiety, lack of knowledge, inattention, or lack of effort. In the case of Miranda, if Miranda was biting her nails and nervously twisting her hair during the subtest, you may assume that anxiety is affecting performance. In contrast, if she didn't understand when to use certain mathematical operation, for example addition versus subtraction, you would surmise that her difficulties are more likely due to a lack of knowledge, poor reasoning ability, or limited instructions understanding. Here I provide you tips to conduct behavioral observations during the assessment. 1. careful observation of behavior takes practice. New examiners are often so intent upon administering a task correctly and recording the responses that they have trouble attending to subtle behaviors. Be so thoroughly familiar with the task you are administering that you do not have to focus on how to administer or score it and can direct your attention to the person's comments, responses, and actions. This is the second point. During the evaluation, take notes about what you are observing as you observe it. Because many evaluations last longer than 2 hours, you should not rely solely on memory. Take notes on the record form next to the section of the task you are administering. Include specific behaviors as well as any statements that may help you to understand and interpret an individual's test performance. This is the third point. You will also find that at times you will want to quote a comment verbatim. For example, "I have so much homework that I want to quit school." Well, in the case of Mark, during an evaluation, Mark, a third grade student struggling with math concepts, commented, "I hate math, and so does my mother." This comment may help you see that unintentionally, Mark's mother is actually reinforcing his negative academic self-concept about math performance. Even if a behavior or comment doesn't initially seem relevant, you may find after the second hour of testing that the remark supports an important interference. Some behaviors are best understood when you consider errors and comments several hours or days later. For example, after examining your comments in the margins of the record forms, you may note that distractible behaviors only occurred during subtests involving the processing of language or during a specific academic subject, such as reading. And this is the fourth point. As you begin to plan what you will write in the behavioral observations section, compile a list of the behaviors you observed. For example, she tapped her feet, or she looked at the window, are sample statements that describe behaviors. As you review the list of behaviors and comments, attempt to categorize them into recurrent themes. Example, behaviors indicative of persistence, inattention, positive self-concept, and so on. When a common underlying theme exists, provide an interpretation of the behaviors. For example, you may find that several behaviors on different subtests seem to indicate inattention. If you observed that the child has difficulty following lengthy instructions and have trouble sitting still and remaining in the chair, then you can write a statement, or maybe in one supporting paragraph, about how these behaviors are indicative of problems with attention. This is the last tips. Your interpretation will help the reader understand the behavior. For example, the fact that Claire tapped her feet during the digit span subtest. could indicate anxiety, boredom, or frustration. Or it could even have been a technique for adding in the recall of the numbers. Similarly, the statement, Maria looked off into space, may indicate distractibility, social avoidance, or failure to understand the requirements of the task. You have to interpret the behaviors. Ordinarily, do not interpret only one particular behavior in isolation unless it is dramatic, such as when a child cries when trying to write a paragraph but responds appropriately to challenges on all other tasks. Well, as you can see here in the slides, here are some examples of behaviors, interpretations, and how to combine them into a statement. These examples of other behaviors and interpretations and illustrates how to combine them to create a clear description of behavior. And this slide reviews important points to remember when writing behavioral observation. You need to pay attention on do's and don'ts here. When you are about to write the behavior observation section in your psychological test reports. And finally, we've come to the second section of this video. We will discuss about the contradicting behaviors. Although your behavioral observations will usually be consistent, sometimes they will contradict one another. When this occurs, attempt to resolve and explain any contradictory information. So maybe you are questioning what to do when facing contradiction. Here are some tips when you are facing this kind of situation. 1. Before making broad generalization about behavior, review the observed behaviors carefully. For example, a child may seem anxious on certain tasks but relaxed on others. Explain then how differences in the types of tasks affected behavior. Before making broad generalization about behavior, please do the review of the observed behaviors very carefully. Well, if 10 behaviors support one interpretation, but one behavior seems contradictory, then the second tip is propose a hypothesis about why the one behavior differed from the rest. If the person displayed frustration only during the one problem-solving task and was calm for the rest of the evaluation, then the third tip is describe this exception with a hypothesis about why the behavior differed on this particular task. Okay guys, those are two sections that are discussed in this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope this material is beneficial for you to study. And don't forget to watch the second part of this video. This is the first part, right, about behavioral observation. So I suggest you to also watch the second part. Okay? See ya! Thank you for watching.